I'm going to start my speech with a simple question. What exactly is the state? Because here on side proposition, we believe that the state exists in order to represent the interest of the people, and in order to further the interest of the people. The state is not just an entity that exists for the sake of existing. It is the duty of politicians to represent the will of the people, and furthermore, when an issue arises, to inform the population so they can give their consent in this kind of an issue. We believe that what team opposition stands for today and their idea of representative democracy is more akin to actually autocracy, because they have a team of experts that are always going to make the decisions that are somehow always better and are always going to be in the interest of the population. But we believe that this is not the case. We believe that even if somehow you are not going to pass a certain referendum, it is still better on the comparative because the people have given their consent to that decision, and that is why I have never been more proud to stand on proposition. So before I start my speech, where I'm first of all going to re-explain our whole principle of democracy and why we believe that people deserve the right to consent. And then second of all, I'm going to explain what are the outcomes of the motion in our world, a few points of clarification. And the first point of clarification that I'm going to make is that we are not against free trade agreements at all. What are we telling you is that we should not fast forward these agreements and just have them simply passed to the parliament and through the government, but rather the people should enforce their consent. Because team opposition today spent 7 whole meetings explaining to us the benefits of free trade agreements and how we are not going to have them. First answer to that, we are telling you that if the benefits are so big, the population is going to vote for them anyway, so what is your problem with having an extra layer of consent? But second of all, we are telling you that even so, if we have those free trade agreements that are not in the interest of the population and that can be made better, then the population are going to lobby for making better causes. We are not against free trade agreements at all. So entering the first point about how we are achieving better representation of the people. And the biggest contention today made by team opposition was that politicians can better represent the interest of the people because citizens are emotional. And what we responded to that was that, first of all, in either words, citizens are going to be emotional. So even if they vote for a president or they vote for a representative or prime minister or whatever they vote for, they are still going to be influenced and they are still going to be emotional, so that is non-comparative in either words. But then they told us that we have experts that make the best decisions. But do they always make the best decisions? Because you had the argument of my second speaker, where we explained to you that we have lobby groups that put pressure on politicians, that finance their campaigns, and that is why politicians have to balance out the interest of corporations, that finance them in the interest of the population. And the problem with that, Mr. Speaker, is because trade agreements right now are being negotiated in secret, like the case of the TTIP, which was being negotiated behind closed doors. And the problem with that is that this means that people don't exactly have scrutiny and cannot exactly go to the politicians, no thank you, and tell them, wait, you're not actually representing my will here, you're putting the interest of some corporations above my interest. And the problem with that is that when we have a council of experts that decide everything, it means that those experts are selfish, and it is the higher likelihood that they are going to make a decision that is not going to always prioritize the decision of the people. So because of that, we believe that we should give, people do have the right to consent, we should empower their consent, and at the end of the day, even if they don't make the best decision, it's still better because it is informed by their consent. But now, what is more? We have been given, I'm sure you have always heard the example of Brexit and how that was a negative vote. But we believe that even if that vote had not created the likely outcomes, it is still better because you create a culture of democracy and you teach people how to campaign better and how to make better referendums and better policies. Why is that? Because when you teach citizens how to get better informed and how to express their decisions better, that is when we are going to create a culture of democracy like the one in the Northern European countries or the one in Switzerland. Because it is better for people to have the right to consent. Because when they do not have a say, like it was in the case of Brexit, where the people of the United Kingdom did not vote on whether or not they even wanted to be in the European Union, but they let their experts decide, because economy apparently is better than everything, they grew frustrated, they grew angry, and that is why they started voting for far-right politicians like Nigel Farage. And we are telling you that even if we did not have that referendum in the United Kingdom, what would have happened is that they would have voted politicians like Nigel Farage in power. And on the comparative, that it's even worse, because this means that those politicians can make make even, can influence other policies, and can they make them more extremist and more non-representative of the actual people, and hurt the country in the future on the comparative more. So we're telling you in this point, I'll take in a second, that if you let people build up frustration and not them exercise the right to vote, they are going to become more frustrated, they are going to vote politicians like Trump or politicians like Nigel Farage and further jeopardize the future of their country. Please.
What about the representation of the 48% that voted Remain in the EU? Were they not neglected? Were they not ignored completely by the Leave votes?
Well, when you have a referendum, of course, there is going to be a part that is going to lose. But what we are telling you is that this policy is not always going to apply to one single referendum, and that is going to be it. We believe that as the world is a flexible place, as policy and economics and politics are very flexible, in the next referendum it will be much easier for the people that were in the Remain camp to better lobby for their interests, to better represent their interests, and to have a better campaign. So yes, at the end of the day, those people are going to have a better chance too. But entering the second point, about what are going to be the outcomes of this motion. And again, the biggest point on side opposition was how can minorities be better protected? And first of all, we told you that minorities are better protected when they go and directly cast a ballot in the voting booth. And because they told us that, well, you have minorities inside of parliament that can form coalitions. First of all, if you are a minority, it means that your vote does not count as much as that the vote of the majority. So it is really hard for the parliament that is being empowered to actually take your decisions into account. It is really hard for those people to actually make a meaningful discussion. But what is more, when you are a minority party inside of a coalition, you do not necessarily vote in the interest of the people, but you vote in the interest of your party. And that the interest of the party might not be necessarily in the interest of minority and in the interest of the people. But what we told you on the comparative on our side is that when you have those groups that can directly pressure politicians, those groups that can directly go and lobby, that is when you are going to achieve more representation, because each and every vote is going to count. Why? Because when you have a free trade agreement that is being negotiated, that is going to take a long time, and politicians want to make sure that that free trade agreement is going to be ratified by the population. So that is why they are more likely in our world to listen to the demands of the minorities, to listen to the demands of people that are disenfranchised or underrepresented. So we also take that point. But also on the point of media, and they have told us that media is biased and media is brought by private corporations that are going to sway people. First of all, that is again going to happen in their world as well. If the media is so biased, it means that people are going to vote the way the politicians want either way. So again, what is the problem with having an extra layer of consent? But what is more, we have told you that when you do have a media that is also in favor and against the free trade agreement, you are going to create a better discussion. Because it will be much easier for both sides to point out the flaws that are in the free trade agreement, to point out what are the pros and cons, and at the end of the day to make people better informed and to make people have rational discussion. So at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker and audience, none of us in here understand truly what the free trade agreement is, but we always have an opinion on it. We all know what to believe in it, and we all know what are the effects are going to be. Whether I lose my job in the next year, or whether I do not have food to give my children. But because we do understand, and because we are the people, and because we hold the power, we believe that we are the ones that should be voting, and not the council of experts that is not always going to take into account the interest of the people.